Welcome to Quirky Queen's Journals. My name's Kirsten. So today we're using the gel plate and it's on a glass chopping board from the kitchen. I've also got a couple of brayers that I'm using, and these are the black and white paints that I'm using, and everything will be pulled on printer paper. So first in the top 10 is water, and I chose this to be number 1 because it's free. Straight out the tap, so I am spraying water and I'm just letting it sit. I'm going to do 2 versions of this. This version is where I let the water dry, and the area where I sprayed the water, it took a few hours to dry. I ended up leaving it overnight. So you can make quite controlled marks and quite random organic marks using water on the gel plate. You can use just a damp rather than wet paintbrush. I also like it to soften edges and to sort of have a graduation from one shape to another. I'm just showing you different marks you can make. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it's very effective. So going over it a couple of times actually helps clean out the paint from within, but it leaves you with a lovely, soft, natural edge. So this top 10 is just a short introduction to each type of technique that I like to use on the gel plate, but each technique can be used further and explored more. So this is it dry. You can see there that where I sprayed the water, it's left those quite organic shapes where they've almost got a raised edge to them. Now everything I do, I'm going to use the black paint to do the techniques on and the white paint to pull it off the gel plate. So this was left for about 10 minutes before I pulled it back off. And you can see there that it was worth the wait. So if you're using this, probably better to use it before you go to bed, and then you can deal with it in the morning rather than having your gel plate out of action for a few hours. But even just the different amount of water made a difference. How it was applied made a difference. So what we're doing now is we're going to repeat the process, but this time we're just going to put the paper on straight away. So the paper will buckle, it will become wet. So if this was to be a final picture, you would, use a better quality paper. So I sprayed some on the right hand side, and on the left hand side I'm just brushing some on. This paint is wet that I'm brushing into, but you could do it with the dry paint as well. You get more raggedy edges. I regret not doing a dry paint version. Something to explore further. So I love printmaking, and I've been watching a lot of printmaking videos where they use a press, and I've been thinking about ways to adapt it for the gel plate. And that's where I learned a lot of these types of techniques. My plan also is I want to start making big abstract paintings using a combination of different techniques to introduce variety, organic shapes, just really interesting abstract paintings. So you can see there that this paper is, it's starting to look damp in areas on the back of it already. So I left that about 10 minutes probably. I was conscious I didn't want to tear it. And as you can see, a wee bit's left on the gel plate, which is to be expected. But it's quite atmospheric, the marks you get. And I do like the subtle changes in tone. And again, there's that more organic look to it. So number 2 is hot glue gun stencils. And I've made these before and they're quite fragile, so they're not going to last forever. But I mean, you'll easily get 10 plus shots out of each one. It's really one of those ones, the more you look after it, the more shots that you'll have with it. But I do like changing my shapes up quite often, so I'm quite happy to replace them. So I did this on a silicone baking mat. So that's what I used as my sort of platform to make the stencils on with the hot glue. This is a fairly inexpensive way as well. My hot glue gun cost £5 and the glue gun sticks can be bought very cheaply from places like The Range or other large value department stores. So anyway, I picked this up first of all with printer paper, and as you can see it's left a very thick black border. So I went back in with the tissue paper, but I just did half the plate. The other thing as well is there's lots of sort of threads that hang off the stencils, sort of glue threads, thin glue threads. And at first I started trying to remove them, but I actually think that they just add another layer of interest. It's another type of line. I also liked when I pulled the tissue paper off. I got a really usable image from that. So like I say, they're quite delicate, so I won't be storing them with everything else, in a box you rummage through. I'll probably put them in their own wee bag or something. Just, I really like the looseness of them, the way they move. It is almost like, like the way that a plant would be because of the balls of the glue gun as well, the hot glue. That's me showing you it. It's also interesting the different borders depending on the paint you lifted it with, and also probably how thick the glue is on the stencil. The hot glue gun stencils give variety in the heights of the stencil, and that in itself adds interest. It adds sort of depth, it adds variety in the sort of thickness of the black line going around it. And then you've obviously got the little threaded bits. So this was definitely one of my favourites. There'll be a lot more of them. So this is aluminium foil etching number 3. Now this, you can use tin foil from the kitchen that you use for cooking, but this is aluminium foil tape. And what it is it's sticky on one side, and I've just stuck it onto, field paintings, basically. So sort of cardstock type materials. And then I was showing you a pen that does not work anymore. And that's what I used to etch into the aluminium foil. Now that's sandpaper with the aluminium foil on top. That is one of the stencils that I often make, and again I've used that pen to etch into the foil. I've also used raised objects. So this is just a plastic stationery folder. I cut a rectangle out, and then I've took a bit of netting that was from a bag of oranges, and I've put that over the rectangle, and then I've just put a bit of the aluminium foil over the top. And what I like about this is it gives a bit of continuity to these kind of found objects, because you know you're going to get a repeating pattern. Now this is sort of void fill packaging or protective packaging. I love this. Again with the aluminium foil tape over the top. Now they use the aluminium foil with proper printmaking with the press. Oh, this is twine, corrugated cardboard and some of that square cardboard. And this makes a wonderful image. Yeah, so what they use the aluminium foil for is obviously etching into, but also when you're using the proper block printing inks or etching inks, I'm not sure if they're different or not, you can wipe them off the aluminium foil, so it actually helps to give some light in dark areas. So you can, because they dry so slowly, you can make a lot of tonal variations. Basically, you can control how dark and light it is. Now, that is a bit of a doormat that I'd put the aluminium foil over. You can see there it's left good marks. So if you're wanting to do these tonal variations anyway with the aluminium foil, you would be wanting to take the acrylic paint off in areas that you want lighter before it dries. It also becomes more brittle the more you use it. So after 5-6 uses, it's more difficult to etch into, but you can definitely use it a couple of times to etch into, and then you can definitely use it a couple of times and then etch into it. So you've almost got a bit of time to be able to decide, I want my pattern slightly different. So this is it here. Now it's got a sticky back. It's not fiddly. It doesn't stick to everything. It's very easy to use. That aluminium foil tape cost me £15 for 50 metres with a 10 centimetre height. Now you can get smaller and shorter rolls for cheaper. I like the height of that one because it meant that I didn't have a lot of joins. But anyway, I find it's going to have a range of uses, and I really liked it, and I think I can do a lot more with it than I have already. So again, 5-10 minutes I'll leave these for. You just get to know your own paints and gel plate. So there it is there. What I like about this is, again, it's the variety of the line. There's depth in areas as well. So very pleased with that too. So number 4 is media transfer. So this is just about using other things that are not paint and being able to transfer onto the gel plate. So number 1 is charcoal. And then number 2 is graphite. Now this is an HB pencil, like a standard pencil. B will give you darker and thicker. But it's just to show you the HB will still show up on the gel plate. And then this is soft pastel. So we've got charcoal, graphite, soft pastel, and then these transfer so easily to the gel plate. This is probably the simplest method. And if you like drawing realism, you could draw realism and then transfer it over. So the graphite has transferred, believe it or not. You can see it faintly there. Now this is black permanent marker. This Q-Connect comes completely off the plate very easily. And this is a Posca acrylic paint pen. So while we're not transferring, I just thought this was the ideal time to use these. Now, next what I do is I use the permanent marker again. And while it's still damp, because it does dry quickly, while it's still damp, I'm going to remove some of it. And you can see there, it's just gave a lovely different type. It's not like a block colour, it's got a more shaded look to it. And I've done this while the Posca pen's still slightly wet, so those acrylic paint pens take a while to dry. And then, but here, because I've got some black circles in the brayer now, I managed to do some more mark making just with the black circles, so that was quite interesting. So it all came off very well. You can see the HB pencil. And I really like the effect of removing some of the black marker right away while it's still damp. So Leno Cut Stamps, I've been using these a lot lately. So the set to buy costs about £5 or £6. The beginner standard Leno cut knife, and I spent £8 because I got a handguard as well. And then the Leno cut pieces they're slightly more expensive, so that's the sort of starter beginner knives and the handle that you put them into, and then I'll show you the handguard as well. It's a big chunky thing, but it does stop you jagging your fingers. And then these are easy carve linoleum blocks. Some people use erasers, like rubbers. I've not tried that, so I can't advise. But what I use is, because I'm using on the gel plate, there's less carving than you would have to do if you were using it on a press. Because with the gel plate, the areas of the lino that stick out actually remove the paint, whereas in the press, it works differently. I'm just showing you as well. So it can be quite expensive. It's about £10 or £12 for 10 sort of postcard size pieces. So I keep all the offcuts. And I'm just showing you there. So all I've done is it's like I've etched into it. And when you stamp that on the gel plate, it's those lines that remain black. All the raised areas remove the paint. I hope I explained that quite clearly. So all of these apart from one came up beautifully. I'm not sure why that is. I'm wondering if I've used a metallic paint with this or something. Something that's put a coating on it. I don't know. I'm going to investigate further because that's my favourite stamp design. So I don't want to have messed it up. So the wee knives that come give you different. I mean, in a beginner set, you're not going to get much variety in the lines you're cutting. But, you know, exploring it further, you could. I think it's got a cartoon quality to it as well. So what the one in the top left hand corner is like just a sort of offcut. I even like the way it looks with the white paint on it on the gel plate. So that was 10-15 minutes. It's quite a complex design. You don't take chances with complex designs. But I'm really happy with it. And you can see on the bottom left, I need to investigate why the paint didn't remove so well with that one. But you can get some cracking, really graphic marks. So texture gels and Mountboard etching. Now this was a surprise and is new to me. So this is the Mountboard I'm showing you. It's basically, it's like a, I don't know, it's like a cross between paper and plastic. It's like a shiny paper that's on each side. And in the middle is polystyrene. Now, I've scored into that with probably that embossing tool that's at the side. Like a wee knife, a Stanley blade, whatever. Something sharp. And I've added some of the texture gels. So I was in the shop at the weekend and there was a sale on. So the Mountboard, I got 4 A1 sizes for £12, which is the equivalent of 32 of what's in my hands when you cut them up. So I was quite happy with that. This is the very first pull with this. And I really like where I've carved into the Mountboard. That sort of tail that's coming up in the right hand side. Now the gels that I got 3 for £2, so they were £9 each. So I got 3 for £18 and I thought, right, that's a bargain. So the first pull that I've done with it, the gels haven't really shown their full potential, but I didn't press very hard. I think I need to press more with it. So I'll repeat the process. So that's the plate, the Mountboard with the gels and the carving on it. And the gels that I got were a glass bead gel, which is what's nearest the bottom, then a black lava gel and a large grain gel. But to be honest, the type of texture paste, it's not irrelevant because they do give different marks, but it's subtle differences. And like I said, this is new to me, so it's something that I need to explore a lot further. I'm making a song and dance out of pulling this off. I think it was sticking a bit, that's what it was. When I repeat it, it's a much lighter print and it has a lot more detail in it. But you can see the different gels now. The glass bead gel's almost like a softer with the little balls. So, round 2. This time I press harder, especially over the gels, and I put a heavy book down. Now, I've been watching some videos on these calligraphy plates, and using a glossy medium to coat them with helps you get paint back off, and it just helps you use them for longer. I haven't done that, so the polystyrene that I've carved into is exposed and it will be gathering paint. And that in itself will add variety. And then if I've got areas that are carved that have got this glossy medium over them, that will add variety too. Now you can see the different gels now. It is subtle, but it's definitely an area I'm going to do a lot more looking into. I think as well I just clumped the gels on. I didn't kind of try and make a specific shape or anything, so That's me showing you the difference between print 1 and print 2. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. So number 7 is found objects, which we all do. But I just thought that it's actually been quite an important part of me sort of getting to know the jelly plate and pushing boundaries of what I think I should do and what I can do. So this is a little lace doily. And it's acting like a stencil. So this is material. It's just to show you can use the material. And it gives a lovely impression. And when you lift it off, you can actually see, you can tell it's material. And this is IKEA furniture packaging, which I love. It makes the best marks. And these are 3 different types of threads. One is a wax thread, one is an elastic thread, and one is string. And I've tied knots and sort of loops into it. And they're giving some lovely marks. The elastic gives more clear, defined marks. Whereas it looks more dense with the wax thread. And then the string, you can actually see the material of the string showing through. It's quite amazing. So I'm also going to try this with, normal thread. Because I think it would look even denser again. That's me just showing you the different, what I've just described. And I used a little bit of corrugated cardboard as well, just because that's a standard. That and bubble wrap. But I mean, really, obviously it will get paint on it, but there's so much stuff you can try on the gel plate. This is a doormat, and I've put it down in the wrong side to begin with, but when I lift that off, you actually can see the tiny thread fibres. You know, when I pull the print, which is amazing. And I like as well here with these different found objects, because of the way some of the lines are well defined and some are fuzzy, I think there's a lot of depth with this. You know, if you're quite considerate about the type of objects you're putting together to make the picture, you could create a lot of depth. Like, I feel like those string marks look further away than the sort of elastic marks. So image transfers. So I have a lot of books because I sell second-hand books, and a lot of these books sell for £3-4 on eBay, depending on how heavy it is. And this Bobbi Brown makeup manual. A lot of these glossy coffee table books do good image transfers. Not all, a lot of them. And a lot of them have no value at all and sell for pennies over postage on eBay. So, or other second-hand companies. But so I think they're great to use for the image transfers, because a lot of these coffee table books as well are obviously quality books. And they're in abundance, because a lot of people get them for Christmas and then give them to charity shops. Cookbooks are a good example. Most of them should image transfer, I would reckon. I've certainly not had problems. I don't image transfer too often because I prefer to use my own designs. But sort of these makeup books and sort of fashion books that are glossy pages, you know, that you can get for cheap, are good sources of lots of faces and bodies for image transfers. And you want the high contrast as well. You need to be careful when you're pressing. You need to be quite even in your pressure. And it's hard to predict how long you need to leave it on for. So when I removed this, I did have some blotches, but I felt I was at the stage where the paint would start removing from the gel plate, you know, in the eyes and that. So I sort of figured a bit of splotchiness to keep the details of the face was worth it. So you can see there, the darker areas repel the paint and the lighter areas pull the paint off. And that's how you can get the, you know, a copy on the gel plate. So I do repeat this process using different book pages, and one of them is a good quality book page, and another one is, it's a book that will image transfer, but just the quality, there's a slight fuzziness to the edges, and it's just to show you, and that in itself can be interesting. I left a lot of the painting in here because image transfers are one of those things that take a long time to get. I remember the first time I got one. Oh, I think the neighbours heard me. So I'll leave this about 10 minutes and then pull it off. You can see there we've got really good detail in some areas, and in some areas we've got quite a lot of flaws. I don't mind the splotchy marks, you know, the kind of smoky marks, but the big black marks were a bit annoying. Now, this is the other book pages. I've left 3 of them on too long. That one did pretty well. It does go cleaner normally. I could have probably left the one in the middle on longer. Now, the one at the left is the book that I was talking about where the quality's not quite the same. So there's more fuzziness to the pictures. But I still think that can be interesting in itself. You know, to have some clarity in areas and to have some blurred images in others. So I'm just showing you here how clean that line is on the patterned paper, and the flower paper, it's fuzzy. So the penultimate technique is paper. Different weights of paper. This paint is wet. This is just brown packing paper. It's got quite a crispy edge. It doesn't fold up tiny. So the marks it gives you are quite crisp. Now this is printer paper, which is 80 GSM, so it's quite lightweight. So it's more flexible than the brown paper, so it's not as crispy and clear, the lines, but they're still quite crispy and clear. Then that was tissue paper, and it's a lot softer. And then that was a plastic bag at the top, and it's softer again. So that's it dried. Now I think this is good for creating background, creating texture, sort of getting values going as well, because the more you press it with the paper, the more paint you're removing. But I also think we've got quite good movement on here as well. It does look like the sides are closer to you, as if it's coming out from the middle with speed. So yeah, I was quite impressed with that one. So number 10 is Sgraffito. So we have on the left hand side the paint will be wet when we do it, and on the right hand side it will be dry. So the first thing I'm using is these paper blending stumps that you can buy for about £5 on Amazon, cheaper in other places probably. And what I liked about these is you can actually press quite heavily without fear of damaging the plate because they're just paper. And just showing you a variety of lines, curving and straight. And then this is one of the, I think they're called embossing tools. They've got big metal balls at the end. They give quite a clear defined line, but you need to watch your pressure when you're pressing. And then I use a hog hair paintbrush, basically a stiff-haired paintbrush. You could use a softer paintbrush, but it'll be more of a sort of shading effect that you would get. And then I use some more colour shaper tools. Now, I think they use these for ceramics. So you get the big colour shapers, the silicone wedges. And these are just much smaller versions of that. So they make good marks. And then, so after this, we'll go into the right side where the paint is, I mean, it's probably dry now on the left-hand side, to be honest. So when the paint's dry, you actually get a clearer line. Do you see that with that blending stump? It's very, it picks the paint off very easily. But when you're not pressing, if you just do quite a fast line, then when the paint's dry, it kind of brushes over the top of it and it leaves more paint behind. Basically what I'm trying to say is the wet and the dry paint and the type of tool that you're using to remove it will give you different effects. And they're all good because they've all got their place. I like doing it into the dry paint because to me it feels like I've got more control and I think the effects are quite unusual. So here it's almost like a shading effect with the paintbrush, the dry, stiff-haired paintbrush. So when we lift it with the white paint, you will see the effects a bit more easily, especially down the bottom right-hand corner with the shading. So these 10 techniques I've went over today are just sort of an introduction to each one. There's a couple of them that are new to me and, you know, definitely a lot more techniques and a lot more that each of these techniques can achieve as well. So you can see there the way that when you divide it up into the dry and the wet, that's the wet side I'm pointing at. And then on the dry side, you've got, you know, different values coming up. So anyway, that was my 10 techniques and I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you soon and take care. Bye.